You already know what this video is about, so let's jump right into it. In this video, I'm going to talk about the 10 things that I really wish I knew before going to Las Vegas nightclubs. Number 1, they're free with a promoter. I mentioned this on my video about how to do Las Vegas on a budget. I have a link listed below to it in the description if you want to check it out. When most people go to Vegas, they think money. They think I need to spend all this money, I have to save up a ton of money, but the truth is, Vegas is one of the cheapest places you can go to if you do it right. And when it comes to the nightclubs, you can get in for free, super easy, to almost every single nightclub on the strip. And this is not just for girls, this is for guys as well. You do have to go through a Las Vegas club promoter, but they're completely free to use, they're super helpful, and they can get you in for free to almost any single nightclub you want to go to. Number 2, they're super easy to get into. Now, I wanted to mention this because I've had a lot of people hit me up saying, hey Mark, I want to go to Vegas, I want to go to the nightclubs, but I heard it's super hard. They're super hard to get into and they're super strict in terms of who they let in and don't let in. Now, I've gone to a ton of clubs all around the world, and I'm going to be honest when I say that Las Vegas nightclubs are one of, if not the easiest set of nightclubs to get into, period. They have tons of events going on almost every single night, and their biggest thing, as you can imagine, for a lot of people going to Vegas who are on vacation, they want everyone to have a good time. There are other nightclubs I've been to, being honest, that are unbelievably strict about the dress code, how you look even, they can be very superficial. When it comes to Las Vegas nightclubs, they're like, hey, let's all come in, have a good time, and have a good night. There is a dress code that is something you do have to keep in mind. It's definitely not as strict as other nightclubs I've been to, but if you wear sneakers or hats, for example, you would not be let in. This is something you have to keep in mind, that if you're not up to the dress code, they will not let you in. Whether you're using a promoter or you bought a ticket, you will not be let in. I do have a link listed below in the description to a video I did about the dress code, but my best advice, honestly, when it comes to the dress code is look like you're going to a nice family dinner and up. So for the fellas out there, if let's say you want to go all out, wear like a full-on suit, tie, full-on business suit, go for it. However, if you want to dress down, I've easily gotten in with nice shoes, black jeans, and a black V-neck. That simple. So I will say that the dress code is strict, but definitely not even close to as strict as other places I've gone to. And like I said, when it comes to going to the Las Vegas nightclubs, they require way less hassle than you think. Number 3, the ratio structure. This is a really cool, secret pro tip not a lot of people know. Now, when it comes to using club promoters, as you can imagine, they covet way more girls than guys. However, how much they care about that ratio is dependent on the nightclub. Omnia and Hakkasan, just to use them as an example, they care more about quantity. So when it comes to the guest list, they're like, hey, everyone can get in for free from say 10 p.m. to midnight. Doesn't matter the group, doesn't matter the ratio. If it's 10 dudes, they can get in for free. If it's 5 guys, 5 girls, they can also get in for free. Doesn't matter, we just want a packed house. When it comes to other nightclubs, however, take Excess for example, they care more about the ratio. Even if you're on the guest list, you need an even guy to girl ratio, or preferably more girls than guys, in order for everybody to get in for free. Let's say it's 5 guys and 4 girls, 8 of those people will get in for free, but one of those guys has to pay. This is something to keep in mind when going through a promoter. And I will say, as you can imagine, if a nightclub like Omnia or Hakkasan or Jewel says everybody can get in for free before midnight or whatever, make sure you get there early. Because if you can get in for free, so can everybody else. And especially if the ratio is not an issue to get in for free. I've seen the line at Caesars, for example, when it comes to Omnia, be out the door and down around the block to get in. And let's say you get to the front at 12:05 and you miss that cutoff, you have to pay. There is one unique trick around this though, and that is buying a ticket. Now I know I'm contradicting what I just said earlier, but there's definitely a huge amount of pros and cons when you look at buying a ticket versus using a Las Vegas club promoter. I know people who have gone to Vegas saying, hey Mark, I'm not gonna lie, I'd just rather buy a ticket. I saw that's only $40 to get in. I'd rather just pay the $40 and not have to text a club promoter. I don't have to get there super early, etc., etc. I could definitely do a way more in-depth video about this, but here's the biggest thing. When it comes to using a club promoter, you typically have to get there early because as you can imagine, they could put tons of people on that guest list. There's been times, like I said, where I got to, I'll just pick Omnia again, the line was down out of Caesar's Palace, around the block. However, the ticket or general admission line was 3 or 4 people. So you're gonna have a way easier time getting in. Typically, not always, but typically if you do buy a ticket, and typically you have no problem getting in a bit later. So if you wanna get there at 11:30 p.m., for example, and you bought a ticket, you probably won't have an issue getting in. However, if you're on a guest list and you get there at 11:30 p.m., you probably won't get in and you're gonna have to pay. This is something you have to weigh out because if you think about it too, drinks in the nightclub are gonna be very expensive. So you might be better off drinking a little bit more, like say if you are consuming alcohol, and then getting in at 11:30, as opposed to getting in, like say at 10:30, an hour or two earlier, and now you're spending all this money to buy drinks. And speaking of that, let's talk about alcohol. There's a few things I want to say when it comes to drinking in Las Vegas nightclubs. First off, as you can imagine, I know it's Vegas, but if you go too hard and you're that guy or that girl, they will not let you in. I know, super Captain Obvious, but I do have to say it. Another thing, in case you didn't know, and this is your first time going to Vegas, you can drink on the Las Vegas Strip with no issue whatsoever. If you want to have a handle of vodka out in the open and be walking on the Strip, no issue whatsoever. This is also true in terms of being in line. And a lot of people don't know this, that when it comes to the front of the nightclub, they typically have like a trash barrel right there. So my best pro tip, and a lot of other people do this, is you can be drinking in line, be drinking all the way up into the point. They say, hey, sorry, you gotta throw that out. You throw it out in the trash, no issue, then you can get in. So you can actually pregame in line while you're waiting to get in. So let's say you got in, now let's talk about drink prices. Yes, as you can imagine, in Las Vegas nightclubs, drinks are very expensive. You're talking minimum, and I mean minimum, $12 for a Bud Light, and it goes up from there. Mixed drinks are typically gonna be a lot more expensive. Shots are gonna be a lot more expensive as well. One huge pro tip though is some nightclubs, and again, it depends nightclub to nightclub, will have a flat rate for every single beer. I remember I was at Zouk nightclub and it was $12 for a beer, whether it was Bud Light or another beer. And one of the beers they had was Space Dust. In case you didn't know, talking about the ABV or the alcohol by volume, one Space Dust is twice as strong as a Bud Light. So if you buy one Space Dust, it's almost like getting 2 Bud Lights. However, they were the same exact price. So of course, I bought the Space Dust because as you can imagine, it's like getting 2 drinks for the price of 1. Make sure to look at all the different options when you're buying alcohol in the venue. The DJ time. This is another one that in case you've never been to a Las Vegas nightclub or a lot of other nightclubs for that matter, things go very late. Typically, in Las Vegas, when it comes to the nightclubs, it does depend night to night, it depends on the artist and whatnot, but the main headliner going on typically goes on around 1-ish a.m. Sometimes it's as early as 12:30, sometimes it's as late as even 1:30 or even closer to 2. And like I said earlier, this also weighs into the fact of using a promoter versus buying a ticket. Because let's say you get in at 10:30 p.m. and you are consuming alcohol and the DJ doesn't go on until 1:30 a.m., you're there for 3 hours. Now, of course, there is an opener, so you are gonna be hearing music, but you're gonna be there for 3 hours just kind of waiting around, as opposed to if you bought a ticket, you might be able to get in around 11:30 p.m., even sometimes closer to midnight-ish. It does depend based off capacity and a few other factors. I did want to mention this though on the list because let's say if you're not a night owl, let's say you typically don't go out late, for example, be prepared that the DJ just starts around 1-ish a.m. I've heard of some DJs going until 6 or 7 a.m. That's a bit atypical, I will say, but they usually go to maybe about 4-ish a.m. depending on their set, depending on how long they want to DJ for. But then after that, there's always a DJ that performs after the headliner. So things go pretty much all night. Number 7, the hotel connection. This one is super simple, but something I wish a lot of other people knew, which is why I'm putting it on this list. In case you didn't know, every single nightclub on the Las Vegas Strip is connected in some way, shape, or form to a hotel. This is a great way to plan out your Vegas trip. Let's say you're just there for a weekend, you're trying to do as much as you can. This is a great way, like I said, to see as much as possible. Let's say you want to go to Venetian, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful hotels, and in Venetian, they have the nightclub Tao. Or let's say you want to go to Caesar's Palace, their nightclub is Omnia. What you can do, like I mentioned earlier, get there a bit early, pre-game in the hotel. That way you get to walk around. You can look at the casino. You can check out the architecture, walk around, explore the different shops in that hotel. And then once it's time to get into the nightclub, boom, you go into the nightclub, make sure you still have your drinks, pre-game in line, they ask you to throw them out, and then boom, you got to go into that nightclub. And like I said, this is a great way to kill two birds with one stone, because not only do you get to go to the nightclub, but you also get to check out that hotel, that casino, and other things in that area before you go in. And also, I will say as one last side note, if you are staying in a hotel and you want to go to that specific nightclub, talk to the concierge desk. It does depend. They might just say, sorry, we can't do anything. They also might be able to give you a free pass. I can't say exactly, but let's say you're staying at MGM, for example, on the Strip. Their nightclub is Hakkasan. Talk to the concierge desk, and they might be able to say, hey, you know what? We can put you on the list. We can give you free tickets. We can give you this. We can give you that. The worst that happens is they say, sorry, we can't really help you out, and you just have to find a Vegas club promoter, which is super easy to do, or buy tickets. This is a really unique one, and that is multiple clubs or Clubception. Now, when most people think of a nightclub, take Omnia for example, you think of the main room. You think of like the nightclub with the main room and let's say the headliner or whatever. However, a good amount of the nightclubs on the Strip have multiple nightclubs inside of that nightclub. So talking about Omnia, for example, has the main room for the main headliner and the main show. They also have Heart of Omnia with a whole other artist playing, and sometimes they have different genres. As you can imagine, typically the nightclubs do play EDM or electronic music, but let's say you have an EDM DJ in the main room. Sometimes in Heart of Omnia, it will be a hip-hop DJ. And then lastly, you have the top terrace of Omnia, which means that if you go to Omnia, once you get in, you have almost 3 different sections you can go to, whether you want to go to the main room, Heart of Omnia, or the terrace. Like I said, some nightclubs don't have this. It's sometimes just one main room and that's it, but other ones do, and this is something to keep in mind, because like say if you go to one room and you're like, you know what, I'm actually not feeling the headliner or this main room, you can go to another room, and now you have another option of someone to listen to. Inside or outside. This is something I highly suggest doing research on, as it varies club by club. When most people think of nightclubs, they think of being enclosed in a building. And yes, most nightclubs are like that, but not all. Some nightclubs are mostly outside. If you look at a club like Chateau, for example, other ones are almost only inside. And when I personally go to these nightclubs, I will always make sure to adjust my dress a little bit, just in case it's too hot or too cold. There's been some times I went to a nightclub that was typically outdoors or mostly outdoors, and I had to bring a jacket because it was freezing. I know a lot of people look at Vegas as being super hot, which it is, but when you're in the off season, it's almost the exact opposite. It can get super cold at night, and you do want to make sure you're prepared for that. However, if you're going to a nightclub that's primarily indoors, even if it's cold outside, as you can imagine, it's going to be super hot in the nightclub. Make sure you do some research in advance to see, is this nightclub outside, inside, or a combination of both? And last, but definitely not least, the Las Vegas Party Pass. In the description below, I have a video I did talking all about it, going really in depth about the pros and the cons, and in some cases, you should look at and maybe even get the Las Vegas Party Pass. In other cases, you shouldn't. To oversimplify what it is, the main concept of the Las Vegas Party Pass is you pay a one-time fee that allows you to access 8 different venues. This has changed from the past where they only had a handful, and now they added a lot more venues. And if you think about it, depending on the size of your group, the ratio, how many guys, how many girls, depending on the cost, if you're planning on buying tickets, sometimes a Las Vegas Party Pass can be only about $100, $125, and you have unlimited access to 8 different venues. This also includes not only the nightclubs, but the day clubs as well. And I highly suggest watching that video because, like I said, in some cases, the Las Vegas Party Pass is completely worth it because you're saving a ton of money, a ton of time, and a ton of hassle. In other cases though, the Las Vegas Party Pass is not worth it whatsoever. It really depends on your situation.